We're going to paint our Let It Snow sled. It's been a while, so I feel a little rusty with the video tutorials. First of all, make sure that you either open your box or get some protective paper to set down, because you're going to need to dab your paint off onto it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our baby wipe. If you pull your wipe out of your Ziploc and it is completely dry, you're going to want to spray it, or just like run some water on your hands and then like just kind of do this, because it needs to be damp. You don't want it to be soaking wet, but it needs to be damp. So I like to wrap it around these two fingers. And then I am going to barely dip it into the brown paint. And then before I wipe that on my sled, I'm just going to kind of rub it off onto my paper and then lightly start rubbing my sled. I don't want to push too hard because I want it to go on even. And so if I push too hard, then you kind of have to do the same amount of pressure just so that it looks even. And you can always add more. Like, let's say there's a spot that looks a little bit bare. You can go back and add more brown paint to it. Plus, the way that we're going to be distressing it and adding whitewash over the top of it is going to help disguise any imperfections that you might see. I also recommend that you wipe in the same direction. You will probably be able to see if you paint this way and this way, I think you will be able to. I know with the darker colors, you can definitely see the difference. So I'm sure it'd be the same with this color. I like to go up and down just because the cuts in the sled are up and down. So it just makes it easier, but there's no solid answer. So just whatever you prefer. Okay, I'm going to push pause. I'm just going to finish painting with this baby wipe. Like I say, if you want it darker once it dries and you're like, ooh, I actually want a darker base, do another coat. The more you add, the darker it's going to get, because you're just depositing more and more paint. So we will come on once mine is dry and we will do the distressing. Once your sled is painted as much as you want it to be and it feels dry to the touch, we're going to add some whitewash to it. I sent you with this crazy looking chippy brush. You don't want a nice even brush for this technique. So the biggest thing I can tell you is less is more. You can always add more and deposit more paint, but the only way to get it off is you're going to have to sand it off, and then you might have to add more paint if you take too much off. So you can either use your box. I like to have a paper towel next to me for this, and then I am a very dry brush. Do not have this wet. I'm just going to dip just the ends in it. And then, oh, this is the white color, obviously. And then I'm going to really just get most of that paint off, and so light go back and forth. You might not even be able to see that on camera because I can barely see it on in real life, I should say. Can you even see that? So I'm just very, very lightly adding whitewashing to it. The key is just being patient and going slow, because you want it to look like it naturally was left outside for the entire winter of an entire childhood, and that it distressed naturally. So there will be some spots where there will be more paint, and then some spots that are not going to have any at all. So we're going to pretend that I did that on purpose and I added way too much white so that I can show you how to sand it off. That is what happens when you don't. I should put my hair in a my tail because I'm going to paint all over it. When you don't wipe your brush off too well, but that's okay because we want it to look like it was not done on purpose. We don't want it to look even and beautiful. I mean, the end result is beautiful, but this is the one time that you do not want to make it look uniform. Okay, so if you put too much on, like I did right there, for instance, well, you have two choices. Let's say you actually like having more white, because I am going to be adding more. I don't like how little I have. So you can just try to mimic it and have more. Or once it's completely dry, I just take my sandpaper and ever so lightly just go over the top of it. And it's just really gonna soften out how much white I put on there. So that's actually what I'm gonna mimic for the rest of it, so it doesn't look so harsh. I don't know if it's even coming across on the video. I'll do a picture at the end so you can see what it will look like. But anyways, that is the chippy brush technique. So I'm going to do this a few more times until I get the coverage that I want, and then we'll come back when it's time to paint the other pieces. Okay, I went ahead and did 2 more really light coats. That might sound like a lot, but it literally took me less than 5 minutes to do all 3 coats, or the other 2 coats. So I wanted mine to have about this much coverage. I'm excited to see how, like, your unique take on it. Now let's go, we'll set this aside and let's go to the wedges. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do my gloves first because I want it to completely dry so I can go back through and do the little detail stripes. So if you've done kits before, you know this technique. If not, you're going to get your wedge. Obviously your paint will be in the paint pots. It's gonna use so little that I just put it out on the side. My mittens, I'm doing pink. So you're going to dab your wedge into the pink and then dab up and down onto the side of your box to get most of the paint off. And then just lightly dab up and down. I'm going to do 2 to 3 different coats of each color with this technique. And if you go super light, then you don't have to worry about paint getting over onto your sides and dripping down. It'll just look a lot cleaner. So once this is completely dry, I am going to do a second coat with the pink. So that's the technique that you're gonna do for the thread. I did white. I will come back on here when it's time to do the details on the mittens, just because in case you need a walkthrough. But I'm going to use that same technique with the silver for my snowflakes, and then navy for my words. And so just to review, you dip, dab up and down. And if I get over on like the mitten cuffs with the pink, I'm not going to worry about it. The reason I did pink first is because it's the lighter color between that and navy. So it will be super easy to cover. Now, once I come in and do the cuffs, I'm gonna be a lot more careful because navy is so much darker than pink and it will be hard to cover up. So just a little tip, do the lightest color first. Okay, I'm going to do my snowflakes, my letters, and my string, and then we'll be back to do the mitten details. Okay, once you've painted all of your pieces and they're dry, let's do the little details on our mittens. So I'm going to take the very edge of my wedge and I'm going to dip it, dab it just like normal, and then, oh, you probably can't see. Basically, I'm just going to put my face right next to it so that I can see better, and it's just like coloring a really small piece. I'm just gonna very carefully, lightly dab up and down. And And I'm going to get as close to the pink as possible, but if you can't get right next to it, don't worry, because I will show you a different tool to get there. And that is where our green applicator will come in. We'll use that for the little tiny detail pieces. The wedge just gives it a nice flat, even finish. So that's why I like to get most of it with that. Okay, so as you can see, I have most of it, but not right around the pink. So I'm going to take this applicator, and this is really sensitive, so you don't want to push down, otherwise the fuzz is just going to fall off. And then I'm going to very, very lightly dip it into the blue paint, and then just carefully paint where the stripes are. I'm barely touching down on it. I actually put a little too much paint that time. I'm barely touching down on the gloves. You probably can't even see because it's too small and too far away. But I'm just brushing back and forth. And when I did my other sign for the picture, the other sled, I think I did this 2, maybe 3 times, because you just want really, really light coats. And I didn't want it to look streaky. So just expect that. And then I'm also going to use the applicator to get right around the corners or the edges that I couldn't reach with my wedge, just to make it look nice and clean. That looks much better. And then while this is drying, before I do the other coat, I will show you how I did the details. Okay, I'm gonna do another coat when this dries, but I'll show you how I did the details on these letters. So I just kind of winged it. So I'm trying to, let me look at my picture so I can see what I did. Oh, I just did the edges. I did a dot and a drag. So I sent you with a toothpick. You can either use a toothpick or you can use the other end of your applicator. I think I did silver on my other one. Maybe I'll do white for this one. So for the dot, for the details on my letters, I don't know if you can tell from the pictures. You probably could from Facebook. I'm going to dip the end of my applicator in the white, and just on the edge of my letters, I'm going to do a little dot. Just like, if it won't be blurry, just like that. And then I will use my toothpick to drag lines. I guess you could technically use your applicator too. Maybe that's what I'll do. Did I do it on snow? Yes, I did. Okay. So you can either use the toothpick if you want a thinner line, just use the pointy end, or you can use the back of your applicator, and I literally just drag the line up. There was really no rhyme or reason to it. So dragged one up and one down, just to give it a little bit of highlight, a little bit of character. Just felt not as boring. But boring is good too, if that's what you want on your letters. That's okay. Okay, so I'm going to just repeat this with all of my letters, and then I'm going to go back, give another coat on my mittens, if you want to see an up close of the details I did on the letters, just look on the picture on Facebook. You should be able to see that much better. And then we'll come back and we'll put it all together. Now we're going to put it together, the most exciting part. As always, I always say, open your super glue away from your project so that it doesn't squirt glue all over everything and ruin it. Okay, so as you can see from mine, I laid everything out so that I know the etching is covered. I know where I want my snowflakes. That way it just helps you so that you don't accidentally glue something down where it doesn't belong. A little tiny super glue goes a long way. You don't have to cover every single inch of every letter. So I'm just going to very, very lightly squeeze out a little line and then make sure that it matches up with my etch and press down. These little pieces, I only press down very quickly. You can hold them down if you want to make sure, but I've never had a problem with them. The bigger pieces, I do always say press down and hold for like 5 to 10 seconds just because you want to make sure that every surface has adhered. But on these smaller pieces, it's pretty instant. And if you do just a small amount of super glue, that's always better because the more you do, the more it's gonna like splurge out, and then you're gonna have the look of the shiny super glue that dries. Okay. This is like the most exciting part for you to do, but it's the most boring part to film. Okay, and then with snow, because super glue does dry so quickly, I just kind of map out like the bigger pieces. I always try to get the very ends just to hold it down more. And so I'm pretty much just gonna go like here, 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 and then like just like a line basically on every letter. So try to go fairly quickly. The pieces that you see me do multiple passes, it's because I'm squeezing the glue so lightly, so sometimes nothing comes out and I have to redo it. Okay, and then I start with the S and then go to the W and then make sure that the rest of it is lined up. But generally speaking, if your ends are lined up, then everything is gonna look great. And this I'm just gonna hold down for a few seconds. Then as far as the snowflakes, kind of the same thing. I'm just gonna dot the middle and then just like the very tip of the bigger flakes, I guess. And then I'm gonna put that one right there. Maybe since this one's a bigger flake, I'll do just a dot on those. Hold that one down for a little bit longer. And with my snowflakes, I just try to make sure that like they're not all going one direction. Like I don't want them all to be up and down and things like that. So I just kind of rotate their flakes, I guess. I don't know what else to call them. Their arms, perhaps. And then we'll go, this one can go up. Okay. Now, for the mittens, you can see that that this has a little opening. That's because I hung mine on my T. So like so. So I am just going to put some super glue along the actual mitten, and then just whatever is left over on my tip, I am not squeezing my glue at all. I will put on the actual line, and then I'm going to, I am not even on camera, I'm just going to put it along the T like so, and then hang it, and then press it down that way. Because I didn't want my mittens to be flailing off my sled, so I did it right along the edge, if that makes sense. So it's just like that. And then get your twine. If you have a specific way you want to tie it, awesome. I did not. I just tied a knot on one, literally no rhyme or reason, except for I did do the knot closer to the back because I didn't want to see it. And then I trimmed, sorry, I'm trying to be able to see, but then also kind of have it on camera. And then I just trimmed the excess off. So like I will cut this little piece. And then I basically try to envision how long I want this string. So probably about this, because I guess it depends. Are you hanging it on your door in a wreath, or are you just gonna have it on your fireplace? Because if you just want it to like lean along your fireplace or on your mantle, you don't need a huge string. So I feel like that is a really good happy medium for both. And so that is where I will tie my knot, because then you can do both. You can either hang it or lean it. And then it is time to trim. I need to go and find my scissors, but there you have it. You are finished with your sleigh. I cannot wait to see your version.